On the morning of February 8, 2002, a Pennsylvania mother drove her 2 children to school. It appeared to be an ordinary morning. Her children climbed out of the vehicle, expecting to see their mother again later that day. But Brenda Heist never returned home. By evening, her family was searching for her. Her car was eventually found abandoned. Her belongings remained behind. There was no clear goodbye, no confirmed sighting, no body, and no explanation. As the years passed, suspicion fell on the person closest to her, her husband. Her children grew up wondering whether their mother had been abducted, murdered, or left somewhere no one could find her. Eventually, a court declared Brenda legally dead. Then, 11 years after she disappeared, police in Florida received an astonishing confession from a woman who had been living on the streets. The woman said, "I'm Brenda Heist. She had not been murdered. She had not been kidnapped. She had walked away." But where had she been for 11 years? Why had she never contacted her children? And what happened to the family she left behind? This is the extraordinary and deeply painful case of Brenda Heist. In 2002, Brenda Heist lived in Lititz, a small community in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. She was in her early 40s and was the mother of 2 children, a young daughter and a teenage son. To people looking from the outside, Brenda's life may have appeared relatively ordinary, but behind closed doors, the family was going through a major transition. Brenda and her husband, Lee Heist, were divorcing. The separation was reportedly not marked by the kind of public violence or explosive conflict that immediately suggested danger. Nevertheless, divorce can bring enormous emotional and financial pressure. Brenda was reportedly worried about money. She was searching for affordable housing. According to the account she later gave investigators and the media, she had applied for housing assistance but had been turned down. She had also requested a raise at work and had not received it. Whether these events fully explain what happened next is impossible to know, but they formed part of the emotional crisis Brenda later described. On Friday, February 8, 2002, Brenda began the morning by taking her children to school. Nothing about that act suggested that the children were seeing their mother for the last time in more than a decade. There was no reported farewell explaining that she intended to disappear. No promise that she would call. No indication of where she was going. She simply dropped them off and vanished. When Brenda failed to return, the details inside her home made the disappearance even more disturbing. According to contemporary reports, there were signs that Brenda had not prepared for an extended journey. Personal possessions remained behind. She had not packed her life into suitcases. There was no obvious evidence that she had carefully organized a permanent escape. Her vehicle was later found abandoned near a bus station. This was a critical piece of evidence. An abandoned car can suggest many possibilities. Perhaps the driver had been taken against her will. Perhaps she had deliberately changed transportation. Perhaps she had entered another vehicle voluntarily. Or perhaps the car had been placed there to mislead investigators. But the vehicle did not tell police which possibility was true. Brenda had seemingly disappeared between ordinary moments. 1 minute, she was a mother, completing the morning school run. Then she was gone. Lee reported his wife missing. Police opened an investigation. Because spouses and partners are often examined closely in unexplained disappearances, investigators naturally looked at Lee. The divorce made that scrutiny even more intense. Had the separation turned violent? Was there a hidden financial motive? Had an argument occurred? Did Lee know more than he was admitting? For investigators, these were reasonable questions. For Lee and the children, however, those questions became a shadow that followed them for years. When an adult vanishes without witnesses, Detectives usually begin with the person's closest relationships. That does not mean the spouse is guilty. It means investigators must test every possible explanation. Lee reportedly cooperated with authorities. He was questioned and examined. Investigators searched for evidence connecting him to Brenda's disappearance, but no evidence established that he had harmed her. He was never convicted of any crime connected to the case. Even so, being cleared by police does not always erase public suspicion. Some people continued to wonder whether Brenda had been murdered and whether her husband knew what had happened. Lee later described living under that cloud of suspicion. It affected not only him, but also the children. According to family accounts reported after Brenda resurfaced, the children experienced social isolation. Other families reportedly hesitated to allow their children to spend time in the Heist home. The unanswered questions had turned the family into the subject of rumors. Imagine being one of Brenda's children. Your mother has vanished. You do not know whether she is alive. You cannot mourn because there is no body. You cannot hope confidently because there is no confirmed sighting. And as you struggle with that uncertainty, people whisper that your father may have killed her. The children did not simply lose their mother. They also lost the security of knowing what had happened to their family. Police continued looking for Brenda. Her information was entered into missing person systems. Investigators followed leads. Photographs of Brenda circulated, but years passed without a confirmed answer. There were no verified telephone calls to her family, no authenticated letters, no bank activity publicly revealed that led investigators directly to her, no arrest for her murder, and no remains to bury. The case gradually became what so many missing person investigations become: a collection of unanswered questions suspended in time. Had Brenda met with foul play shortly after leaving her vehicle? Had she taken her own life somewhere her body had never been found? Had she suffered memory loss? Or had she deliberately abandoned her identity? The final possibility was difficult for many people to accept. Brenda had left behind 2 children. Could a mother truly disappear voluntarily and remain silent for years while her children believed she might be dead? At the time, there was no evidence that gave the family a certain answer. Lee eventually sought to have Brenda declared legally dead. In 2010, approximately 8 years after she vanished, a court granted that declaration. Legally, Brenda Heist was dead.
Her family had reached a formal conclusion, even though no one knew where her body was. But Brenda was alive. She was more than 1,000 miles away, carrying a secret that would eventually shock everyone who had searched for her.
When Brenda finally resurfaced, she told investigators a remarkable story. It is important to understand that much of what is known about her departure came from Brenda herself. There were no cameras documenting every step. Investigators could verify her identity and some parts of her later life, but her emotional state and spontaneous decision were described primarily through her own account. According to Brenda, after dropping her children at school, she went to a park. She was overwhelmed by the divorce, money problems, and uncertainty about where she would live. She sat on a bench and cried. While there, she reportedly encountered a group of strangers who were homeless or traveling through the area. They asked why she was upset. Brenda spoke to them about her problems. The strangers said they were traveling to Florida. Then came the decision that would alter several lives. Brenda went with them. She did not return home to explain. She did not collect her children. She did not telephone her family from the next town. She left Pennsylvania and headed south. Brenda later portrayed the decision as impulsive rather than carefully planned. But even an impulsive departure becomes something else as the hours turn into days. At some point, she would have understood that her family was searching. At some point, she would have known her children were frightened. At some point, returning became a choice she continued not to make. One day passed, then another, then a week, then a month. Eventually, an impulsive escape became an 11-year disappearance. Brenda traveled to Florida and entered a life far removed from the one she had left behind. According to police and news reports, she lived for extended periods among homeless communities. She slept outdoors and under bridges. She survived through temporary work, panhandling and scavenging for food. At times, she reportedly stayed with people she met. Her life was unstable. There was no permanent home waiting for her. No secure job that explained her absence. No new wealthy partner. No carefully constructed luxury life under a different name. Instead, Brenda described years of hardship and survival. This raises one of the central questions in the case. Why did she not return? A person may make a desperate decision during a moment of emotional collapse, but Brenda had countless opportunities over 11 years to contact someone. A police department, a relative, her children. Even an anonymous message could have told them she was alive. Brenda later said she felt ashamed. As time passed, the shame apparently became another barrier. The longer she stayed away, the harder it may have seemed to return and explain what she had done. But while Brenda feared facing the consequences, her children were already living with those consequences every day. She knew their names. She knew where she had left them. She knew they would be searching. Still, she remained silent. Back in Pennsylvania, Brenda's family tried to continue living. Her children grew older. Birthdays passed. School years ended. Milestones happened without their mother. Her daughter entered her teenage years and then adulthood. Her son became a young man. Their understanding of Brenda was frozen around the day she disappeared. For 11 years, they did not know whether their mother had chosen to leave or whether someone had taken her from them. That uncertainty can create a form of grief known as ambiguous loss. When someone dies and the death is confirmed, the family can begin mourning a known reality. But when someone disappears, hope and grief exist at the same time. Every unexpected telephone call can feel significant. Every unidentified body reported in the news can bring fear. Every alleged sighting can reopen hope. Lee eventually remarried. He and the children built a life around Brenda's absence. The legal declaration of death gave the disappearance official finality. But emotional finality was impossible. Then, in April 2013, everything changed.
Brenda was living in the Florida Keys when she decided to reveal her identity. Reports indicate that she approached authorities in Key Largo in late April 2013. She told them she was a missing woman from Pennsylvania. At first, such a claim would have required verification.
People sometimes give false names or make unusual claims to police. Authorities needed proof. Brenda reportedly provided identifying information. She knew details connected to the old missing person investigation. Police compared her information with records from Pennsylvania. Her identity was confirmed. The missing woman was alive. Detective John Schofield of the Liddittsboro Police Department traveled to Florida and met her. He had spent years connected to the case. Now, instead of discovering remains or arresting a killer, he found Brenda alive. Reports said Brenda expressed shame and apologized for what she had done to her family. Police then faced an unusual situation. Being missing is not, by itself, a crime for an adult who leaves voluntarily. Brenda had the legal right to travel and end contact with other adults. But that did not erase any separate legal issues she faced in Florida, and it did not erase the personal damage caused by her silence. News of her discovery reached Pennsylvania. Lee received confirmation that the wife once declared dead had been found alive. The children learned that their mother had survived. The mystery was solved. But the truth did not bring the relief people might expect. For 11 years, Brenda's children had lived with the possibility that their mother was dead. Now they learned that she had chosen not to contact them. Her daughter, Morgan, spoke publicly about her anger and shock. She made clear that learning Brenda was alive did not instantly restore a mother-daughter relationship. The news created a different kind of pain. A murdered or abducted mother would have been unable to return. Brenda had opportunities to do so. Morgan questioned how her mother could have gone so long without contacting her children. She also spoke about the difficulties the family had experienced while Brenda was gone. Lee said the decision about whether to reconnect would belong to the children. They were adults by then. He would respect whatever they chose. This response is crucial to understanding the case. True crime stories often end when the missing person is found. But finding Brenda did not repair 11 years of absence. Her children had grown up. The childhood moments Brenda missed could not be recreated. The suspicion placed on Lee could not be completely erased from memory. The fear that Brenda was dead could not be undone. The family finally had an answer. But an answer is not always the same as closure. Brenda's decision to reveal herself came when her circumstances were again unstable. Reports indicated that she had been staying temporarily with another person but could no longer remain there. She was facing homelessness again. She also had legal difficulties in Florida, involving the use of another person's identification and other theft-related matters. After revealing her identity, Brenda was taken into custody in connection with an outstanding warrant. This creates another difficult question. Did Brenda come forward primarily because she was ready to face her family? Or had her living situation become so desperate that revealing her identity seemed like her only remaining option? Only Brenda could fully explain her motives. She later appeared in a televised interview and asked her children for forgiveness. She said she loved them. She said she would do what was necessary to rebuild a relationship. She also expressed a belief that her children might have been better off without her. But her children had their own perspective. Love expressed 11 years later could not erase the silence. An apology could acknowledge the harm, but it could not reverse it. Forgiveness, if it ever came, could not be demanded simply because Brenda had returned. The Brenda Heist case is sometimes retold with dramatic embellishments. For accuracy, the confirmed evidence should be separated from assumptions. What is established? Brenda was reported missing from Lidditz, Pennsylvania, on February 8, 2002. She had last been seen that morning after taking her children to school. Her vehicle was recovered after her disappearance. Police investigated the case, and her husband came under scrutiny but was not charged with harming her. Brenda remained missing for approximately 11 years. A court declared her legally dead in 2010. In April 2013, she presented herself to authorities in Florida. Investigators confirmed her identity. Brenda admitted that she had voluntarily left Pennsylvania. She told investigators she had traveled with strangers to Florida and had spent years living in unstable and sometimes homeless conditions. Those are the principal facts supported by police statements and contemporary reporting. What remains dependent largely on Brenda's account, her exact thoughts on the morning she left, the precise conversation she had with the travelers, whether her decision was entirely spontaneous, why she chose not to contact her children during each stage of the 11 years, and why she selected that particular moment to reveal herself. There is no publicly established evidence that Brenda was kidnapped. There is no evidence that Lee murdered her. There is also no evidence that she was physically prevented from contacting her family throughout the entire period. The evidence indicates that she left voluntarily and remained away by choice, even if poverty, fear, and shame later made returning more difficult. Cases like this invite immediate judgment. Some people see Brenda as a mother who abandoned her children and allowed an innocent man to live under suspicion. Others see a woman experiencing an emotional crisis who made one disastrous decision and then became trapped by shame, poverty, and fear. Both perspectives recognize that Brenda may have been suffering. But suffering does not eliminate responsibility. Mental distress may help explain a decision without making its consequences disappear. Brenda's story is not a simple tale of a woman escaping an unhappy life. Her decision affected people who depended on her. Her children did not choose the divorce. They did not choose the financial problems. And they did not choose 11 years of uncertainty. At the same time, the case shows how quickly a person can fall out of ordinary society. Without stable housing, identification, money, or support, returning to a former life may feel increasingly impossible. Brenda's 11 years away were not necessarily 11 years of freedom. By her account, much of that time involved hardship and insecurity. But for her children, those same years involved abandonment and unresolved grief. Both realities can exist at once. The most unsettling part of Brenda Heist's story is not that she disappeared. People vanish voluntarily, more often than the public may realize. The most unsettling part is how long she remained silent. 11 years is more than 4,000 days. More than 4,000 mornings when she could have decided to make contact. More than 4,000 nights when her children went to sleep without knowing whether she was alive. A single telephone call could have removed suspicion from Lee. A short letter could have ended the murder theories. Even if Brenda did not want to return, she could have told authorities that she was safe and wished to remain away. Instead, the uncertainty continued until circumstances brought her to a police station in Florida. That is why the discovery produced anger as well as relief. Brenda had not been hidden in a locked room. She had been hiding from the life she left behind. The disappearance of Brenda Heist began like a potential murder mystery. A mother dropped her children at school and vanished. Her abandoned vehicle became a silent clue. Her husband endured suspicion. Her children grew up without answers. A court eventually declared her dead. But the solution was not buried in a remote forest. It was not hidden in an unidentified grave. It was living in Florida. 11 years after Brenda disappeared, she walked into law enforcement custody and revealed that she had been alive the entire time. Her return solved the question of where she had gone, but it created harder questions about responsibility, forgiveness, and the lasting damage caused by abandonment. Brenda said she was ashamed. Her family said they were hurt, and the 11 missing years remained between them. This case reminds us that not every missing person has been taken. Not every person declared dead is actually gone, and sometimes discovering the truth can be more painful than the mystery that came before it. Brenda Heist was found alive, but the family she left on February 8, 2002, could never be restored exactly as it had been, because some disappearances do not end when the missing person returns. Sometimes, that is where the real story begins.